Hello everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar, Stayntouch Product Enhancements, version 5.47, Task Management Reset Button Improvement, Internal QR Code Creation, and more, presented by Stayntouch Implementation Consultant, Victor Azul. I'm your host, Erin Fisher, the content writer here at Stayntouch. Today's presentation will cover how you can get the most out of the Stayntouch Cloud PMS version 5.47 product release. In this webinar, we will demonstrate how the Housekeeping Task Management Reset button now resets all tasks to unassigned, illustrate the addition of an unassigned option to each housekeeper's column in Housekeeping Task Management, highlight the addition of a Select All None option to the Employee Filter in Housekeeping Task Management, explain internal QR code creation for guest bills, accounts, groups, allotments, and AR invoices, explain that an internal QR code is only produced for locked bills, demonstrate that when an internal QR code is generated, Stayntouch Guest Kiosk will print the company name and the company address if selected during checkout, show the notification for interfaces that produce a QR code for invoices, explain that when FSTA is deactivated, Stayntouch will bypass the fiscalization of invoices, identify an FSTA invoice generation process improvement, and illustrate that the group rooming list is now exportable to CSV. We will have a short Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Feel free to submit questions throughout the presentation, and we will answer them in the order they are received at the end. And that's all I have right now. Victor, I'm going to hand the presentation over to you.
Cool, thanks, Erin. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right, hi everyone. As Erin mentioned, I'll be going over a couple of the enhancements recently released in our latest release. The first one has to do with housekeeping. So in housekeeping, we established the new feature of the reset button. So going over that, to obviously get to the housekeeping tab or the housekeeping section, you go to the menu, housekeeping, and then task management. Under task management, I'll go under manage worksheets. So currently right now, you'll see the reset button on the far right corner, it's grayed out. Currently I have a couple of rooms assigned to 2 different housekeepers. So the reset button will obviously only reset on save changes. So currently these 2 buttons are obviously saved. So if I were to move over 2 additional rooms, for example, to housekeeper 1 and housekeeper 2 or 4, I'm sorry, and then I hit the reset button here, it will only reset those 2 ones that I just assigned to 2 different housekeepers. The ones that are previously saved did not get reassigned or unassigned. If I wanted to unassign those rooms, I would just hit the reset button again, and now all of them would be unassigned. Again, showing you that first, when you're assigning rooms, go in and move them over to the different housekeepers. If I hit save, and then I assign different rooms, only the rooms that I just assigned right now before hitting or after hitting save will get reset. Again, also a good thing to note is anything that you assign on the filters, for example, if you filter on for example, a certain room type, the reset button will only work for that filter that you applied to these rooms. Moving on to the add unassigned option to each housekeeper's column. So again, once we move rooms to certain housekeepers, and I hit the save button, now we have the capability of unassigning the certain room numbers assigned to housekeeper. So if I wanted to deselect or unassign all the room numbers associated with housekeeper 1, there's a new button at the very bottom of their column labeled remove all tasks from sheet, and I can go ahead and remove all tasks from housekeeper 1. I can remove all tasks from housekeeper 3. Now, if I want to remove all tasks in general from all housekeepers, I can just hit the reset button. And again, it will reset all of the housekeepers. I know this was a feature that was requested previously, and a lot of properties have been looking to this, so it's good that this reset button is available now for you to use. Again, same thing as when assigning the room types. If you do assign any filters, obviously it will only apply to those filters, for example, the room types or the floors. The last thing, in addition to housekeeping, that was added as an enhancement is the select all / none option, which is at the top. Now we have the option to select all housekeepers or none at all. Obviously, selecting or deselecting the select all option will deselect all the housekeepers, and obviously selecting all will select all the housekeepers. The next topic, did my screen just go? Okay. The next topic that will be discussed will be the QR codes. So this is a feature that has to be enabled by making a request within the Stayntouch support team to enable the QR codes. The QR codes are basically a creation that can be inputted into the guest bills, accounts, groups, allotments, and AR invoices. So basically, once you make the request to the Stayntouch team to enable the QR code, what you'll need first to do is select the location of that specific QR code. So you would go into your settings, hotel and staff, and stationery. And then you would go to invoices, the general invoice settings, and then in the far right, you'll see where you can set the location of that QR code on those invoices. Obviously, you can set it on the header or the footer as the two options where that location of that QR code will be presented. The QR code, if scanned, will obviously show you information such as the hotel name, hotel tax ID, hotel VAT registration number, guest name, company name, travel agent name, date and time of invoice, invoice number, the total of the invoice, and then the total VAT invoice as well. The QR code, like I said, will appear on final invoices for guest bills, accounts, group allotments / accounts. And an example of what the invoice will look like with the QR code is right here. So obviously this setting decided to put the location at the top at the header. So this is where the QR code will appear. You can obviously also add the QR code to the bottom of the footer as well. Again, to set this up, you would need to contact Stayntouch customer support by sending an email to them and letting them know that you want to enable the QR code. One thing to note is that the lock bill setting must be activated in conjunction with the internal QR code. So basically that means when invoices are locked, they're considered a final legal notice, and these invoices should print an internal QR code if the QR code setting is enabled. Again, in regards to the QR code, the setting is, again, to set that up, it's under general invoice settings and then setting it up within the stationery feature. Another, in addition to the internal QR code, is the Stayntouch guest kiosk to print company name if company address is selected during checkout. So this basically means that during checkout within the guest kiosk, the guest can choose to select the company billing address. In this case, when the internal QR code is generated, it must replace the guest name and account name and the company tax number. And then the last thing in regards to QR codes would be if the property has a current interface that already establishes a QR code. So basically when an internal QR code functionality is activated and the QR code generated cannot be used in conjunction with an interface that supplies the QR code. For example, FSTA or fiscal trust. So if we take a look at the integrations and look at the back office, you'll get a notification, for example, for FSTA, stating right here in yellow that the internal QR code should not be activated when the hotel uses an external system to produce invoices QR codes. Again, you will receive this notification stating this, letting you know that in order to activate this, the QR code must have been disabled. When the FSTA interface is deactivated from this setting, the fiscalization of invoices will now be bypassed in order to generate the invoice without fiscalization. When FSTA interface is activated, all invoices generated will be fiscalized and printed with TSE information and a QR code without delay. Only in this case, when there's a true delay in the response from FSTA interface, will the user receive a fiscalization in progress message. And the last thing I will cover is the last enhancement, which is the group rooming list, which is exportable to CSV now. So if I go into my groups and I go to manage groups, and I created a group already called Holiday Reindeer Games Group, you now have the option when going into the rooming list, you hit this blue button over here in the corner, and now you have the option to export. You also have the option to select a different language, also to exclude certain information. So in this case, I'll exclude room type. I go ahead and hit export, and now I have a CSV file with the information that I may use for anything as far as exporting or uploading into different systems. Again, going into the rooming list, I have the option to export and then exclude the different information that I do not need within the export. And again, pulling the export up, I have that information. That was the last topic I will be discussing in regards to the enhancements. I'll hand it over back to you, Erin.
All right, thank you, Victor, for that insightful presentation. I'd now like to turn over the floor for questions. Remember, you can submit questions through the question box in the middle of the control panel. So I'll give everyone a few seconds to enter those. All right, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'd like to take to the floor to offer some final thoughts. So in this webinar, we demonstrated how the Housekeeping Task Management Reset button now resets all tasks to unassigned, illustrated the addition of an unassigned option to each housekeeper's column in the Housekeeping Task Management, highlighted the addition of a Select All None option to the employee filter in Housekeeping Task Management, explained internal QR code creation for guest bills, accounts, groups, allotments, and AR invoices, explained that an internal QR code is only produced for locked bills, demonstrated that when an internal QR code is generated, Stayntouch Guest Kiosk will print the company name if the company address is selected during checkout, showed the notification for interfaces that produce a QR code for invoices, explained that when EFSTA is deactivated, Stayntouch will bypass the fiscalization of invoices, identified an EFSTA invoice generation process improvement, and illustrated that the group rooming list is now exportable to CSV. With that, I'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you all for coming, and if you have any additional questions, feel free to email me at erin.fisher@stayntouch.com. Thanks again.